Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's session where we will be talking about the Q1 financial performance of the capital market in Bahrain. With us today, we have Nishit, Head of Research from SICO. Nishit, during Q1 of 2021, the capital market has witnessed a lot of volatilities and uncertainties related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the deferments of the loan installments as directed by the Central Bank of Bahrain. We have a low interest rate environment. So can you please take us through the performance of the equity capital market in Bahrain during Q1 and recent Q2 of the year?
Yes, sure. In Bahrain, as one can see in 1Q, was one of the underperformers compared to the other GCC markets. The index was down more than 2%, while most of the markets were in green. And the reason for that was the 4Q results of some of the market heavyweights was weaker, and that influenced the stock prices. And so the likes of AUB, Batelco, they declined during the 1Q, pulling the entire index down. So this AUB did some precautionary provisioning that affected their earnings, while the expenses in Batelco was higher than what the market was expecting. That affected their profitability. So Bahrain market in 1Q was negative, but as we move to 2Q, the Bahrain market has recovered all its losses and it's in green, although still lagging behind most of the other GCC markets. But the performance has become better, and a big chunk of that better performance has been led by Alba, which has done very well in second quarter.
Thank you for that. It was quite an insightful overall capital market overview. Nishit, if we can talk about some specific industries, can you take us through the banking sector industry in particular? How was the performance during the first quarter, and what do you think will be the outlook in the second quarter and the future outlook for the industry?
Yes, in banking sector overall the earnings were good in terms of numbers, but if we have to break down the earnings, the core performance was not very exciting. But the earnings were majorly led by high investment income or low cost of risk, so provisioning was lower. But if you look at the balance sheet side or the NIMs, net interest margins, it was kind of maybe a bit tepid, if I can say. And the reason for that was the loan growth was not anything impressive. Deposits were good, but NIMs, because of the interest rate, has been falling. So overall the banking sector performance was, I would say, average in 1Q, but it could have been, going forward, looking at how the situation is in Bahrain, we have to see whether it can improve or not. Only time will say. So that's mainly on the banking sector. But if you look at the other key companies such as Alba's results were very good. That is one company that has the earnings estimates what we had, and it beat the estimates by a big margin. So Alba did very well, and outside of that, Batelco also did very, very good. So some of the other sectors outside of banking did much better, and banking was kind of okay in our opinion.
So Nishit, when we talk about Alba and Batelco, they have performed well. What would be the key drivers that resulted in the positive, let's say, report that they have generated?
Yeah, for Alba, it is the aluminum prices which has been doing, which has done very well, and their spreads have increased between aluminum and alumina. Spreads are at record highs. So the profitability has gone up a lot, and that has helped them show some commendable numbers, and the stock is reacting to the same. And in terms of Batelco, both the international operations have done very well. The likes of Maldives, which is which is recovering, and even Jordan is doing fine. While Batelco's Bahrain operations have also been very surprisingly resilient. So their profitability overall went up good, and also their operating expenses were much lower than what we had expected. So again, this stock has also done well, and overall Alba, Batelco, and these are pulling up the index in second quarter after the 1Q results.
There is one company in particular which I hear a lot of investors have inquiries about. What do you think about APM Terminal?
APM Terminal, in terms of, they are having a tough year this year, and there were multiple factors that is affecting the fundamentals of the company this year. First is the royalty rate, and royalty rate increased this year on the non-marine services, which is affecting the profitability. And then they also lost one of their clients, Sulb. That will affect their cargo volumes in the coming quarters. Along with that, the container traffic last year was very good. I mean, the terminal benefited a lot from the disruption from COVID, and this is not going to be repeated this year. So they are in a bit of a spot this year. But the stock has already corrected a bit, and it still remains one of the highest yielding stocks within Bahrain. So, I mean, despite all the negatives and the challenges that the company is going through, it is having its own, investors will still find it interesting given the high yields that the company stock is offering.
Okay, and as of recent, Nishit, CBB has issued a directive to defer the loan installments for another 6 months until the end of the year. That would definitely, let's say, have an impact on the economy and the various industries, in particular the banking sector. So how do you think the market will react to the CBB directives? How will this have an impact on the equity capital market in particular?
Well, loan deferments overall is is good for the industry, given that this COVID-related disruption has affected many industries in different ways, and cash flows have been affected. So, with this loan deferment, the borrowers get some breathing space in terms of setting their businesses right, and the defaults will be controlled. So it affects not only the borrowers and also the lenders, because if the default spike, if the deferment wouldn't have happened, then we could have had a lot of volatility in the banking sector. So I think it's the right measure until we continually, I mean, we are seeing the lockdowns in Bahrain as of now, and these lockdowns will continue to affect the fundamentals of many of these companies. So until we have an accommodative stance, and regulator is leading that, which is very, very good. I think this will benefit both the banks as well as the borrowers. And to make a point, that regulators also allowed the banks to be a bit more relaxed on the regulatory ratios in terms of their reporting, which is again a positive sign and measure taken by the CBB here.
Nishit, if I may ask, what would be some of the material major market disclosures that would have an impact on the equity capital market?
Well, there are a few developments that's going on right now among the listed companies. Some of the key developments. First is the InvestCorp delisting, which they have announced that they want to delist from the boards, which fits into their long-term strategy. So that is going on. And then we have a few important M&As in the market. AUB KFH merger deal is still on. Then the BBK Itmar deal is also ongoing. So these are interesting deals. And along with that, recently the GFH acquisition of Khaliji Commercial, the additional stake that they've taken, and only today they've announced that they want to increase or rather they would want to even make a voluntary takeover offer for Khaliji. So these are some important transactions to follow in the capital markets for now.
One last question. If you are required to give some advices to the general public during the uncertainty and the challenging environments, what advice would you give the general public?
Well, yes, this has been a very interesting, challenging times, for the businesses, and as an investor, this challenges also brings in a lot of opportunities. So, if one would have anyways invested in the market around March correction, one investor could have made a lot of money during the market recovery. But from here, you have to be very careful in terms of where the market is heading. And there are both positives and negatives. These lockdowns can bring in more uncertainty, but we cannot ignore the positives that are coming from these lockdowns. So one is on the commodities. Commodities are rallying, and we've seen how that has affected the fundamentals of Alba. It has, the stock is going through, it has increased a lot, but it could go up further. So investors have to be careful on how each of these companies are being affected. What is the strength, the balance sheet of these companies? If a company can survive the lockdown with no cash flows, if they have low operating leverage and they can manage the expenses, then they will be able to bounce back much faster when the normalcy returns. And we all hope that eventually the world will become normal. So when you see a stock correction because of near-term earnings miss or poor earnings, it could be an opportunity to get into the stock with a longer-term view. So I would advise that look at these opportunities. Even on the banking sector, look at the asset qualities of the bank, the coverage ratio, and even if there is a stress on the banking, on the overall economy, if these banks are well capitalized, well covered, if there is a correction in these names, then there is definitely an opportunity. So have to be very agile in such environment, and try to generate alpha by making the right investment decisions.
Yes, I agree with you. If I may also add to that, you have basically market factors and you have company specific factors. So correct me if I'm wrong. I think that we would be, for the general public, they would need to focus on companies that are fundamentally strong. Their core business operations definitely have been impacted, but operations are still sustainable. Earnings are sustainable. So accordingly, they would be impacted with market corrections, but as soon as the market recovers, these companies would still look like good investments. Thank you very much, Nishit. We would like to thank you and SICO for the time that you have dedicated for us. And we look forward to having similar sessions to you in the future. So thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you.